Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thematic Masterclass series. Heads up to everyone that the session is being recorded. And first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Aliona Medelian, and I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Thematic. And with me, I have Alana to just help me move things along and add some thoughts of her own. Alana, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Alana Dell, and I look after product marketing at Thematic. Welcome to everyone.
Great. So a few notes of housekeeping. This is a Zoom call, but myself and Alana will be doing most of the talking. You're most welcome to keep your cameras off or turn on if you like. And if you have any questions, use the Zoom function, the chat function, and Alana will pick them up and ask them for you. So this is the fourth one in our masterclass series. And if you're interested in seeing what else we've been talking about in previous sessions, or get quickly to the recording of this one, you can find this on our website under resources, masterclass events. And when you get there, it's a special page, and you will see that we have 3 recordings there already, and this one will be posted as well, on themes editing, on how to build a story using data, and how to use dashboards and Thematic. So why we're doing these masterclasses? Well, first of all, we would like to share best practices across all of our customers. We also want to make sure that our users will have the confidence and the skills to get the most out of Thematic. And if you're working with a team, these videos will help you train them and perhaps troubleshoot some tricky cases. And we'll also, if there are any new features that are coming up, we'll announce them here as well.
Yeah, just a point that you can also go to the masterclasses on our YouTube channel, which we'll share towards the end. And we see that they have been very popular and people are using them for coming back to again and again. So if you just want to remind yourself sometimes of tips, it's really useful to be able to come back to them.
Great, thanks, Alana. And of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and you get them in your mailbox. Cool. So today's session is about benchmarking, or also called comparative analysis. So we will talk about how to compare your company against competitor companies, or within your company, comparing different business units, or even potentially product lines, different types of customers. So what you will learn today, so our agenda is what's benchmarking and why it's important, pros and cons of different types of benchmarking. There's internal benchmarking is what you do within your company with your internal data, and external benchmarking, for example, competitive benchmarking. And we will also share with you some studies along the way, some examples, and we'll dig deeper into one particular one-off study that we've done on bank app reviews, and show you how companies use Thematic for benchmarking and internally for continuous improvement. So basically making sure that their NPS scores aren't dropping, and other metrics. So why benchmarking? Well, your business is a car, but it could be a Formula One car. If you think about it, the driving speed is similar to an annual growth rate. Your car parts engineers, so people who are working on a Formula One, are different teams or different business units working together in tandem. And in the case of Formula One specifically, there are other teams who are building similar Formula Ones. And these are other solutions that your customer might be purchasing. So just want to use this analogy to explain what benchmarking is. Well, there are basically these two cases. As you're preparing for the race, there are all of these different track and wind tunnel testing, where the teams creating in charge of different parts of the vehicle and the overall car are optimizing. And similarly, within your company, you do internal benchmarking based on the metrics you care about. And then teams compete with all of the other Formula One car in Grand Prix, and the fastest wins. So similarly, you can use competitor benchmarking to understand who will be the fastest to gain the greatest market share.
I think the key thing here is that we could reduce benchmarking down to a competitive analysis, but it's more than that. It's about understanding best practice. And so the idea of a race car is, the metaphor of a race car is useful because it understands that it's about being the best that you can be. And benchmarking allows you to identify what you should be measuring in order to be the best, and on what kind of elements that you need to be the best. So, for example, Formula One racing, wind tunnel testing, aerodynamics, they've already determined what are the things that we need to score well on. And benchmarking is really a tool that helps you to figure that out. So it's, as Aliona mentioned, really good from a continuous point of view, continuous tracking point of view, as well as an initial once-off, to see how you're gauging against the ideal, really.
Yeah, thank you.
So here, I just wanted to use this illustration of how you might use it strategically. So often we do a SWOT analysis where we would look at our strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats, but it's against what are the elements that we're looking for in terms of how do we determine where you sit on a grid, for example. And benchmarking allows you to do that. It's very much a strategic tool as opposed to a quick fix or tactical tool, and really can give you the strength or the edge for your business units or for your competitors. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody agrees that benchmarking is important, and this is why you dialed in or watching this video. So what are the different types of benchmarking? Already mentioned the internal benchmarking. So the kinds of things that you can compare within your business are different product lines, different departments, divisions. You might have different programs, geographies, customer tenure. And the great thing about internal benchmarking is that you know who are the customers. So you know all of the different metrics about them. And for example, revenue, and you can treat their feedback differently based on that. But the negatives are, as once you start comparing things internally, of course, there might be some politics. People might not be agreeing with things. Basically, you need to make sure that everybody's aligned on why are we doing this. So here's an example from actually one of our customers, but all of the data in the examples that I will use is heavily sanitized, and things that change, which is why you see Spain is in slightly different color here. But what they basically were doing is they compared customers based on their geographic location. And they looked at how does the volume of people complaining about pricing being too expensive changes across the countries of that customer. And they found that customers in Spain have statistically significantly less complaints about pricing. So this indicated that there might be things that made Spanish customers less price sensitive. And this revealed an opportunity for basically increasing the prices and see if the revenue in this region can grow as a result. Another two examples, this one is a benchmarking dashboard. where we have a company with 4 business units, and they're measuring their NPS, and you can see that one of the units is significantly better than others. So they have an NPS of 20, whereas unit D, for example, has -44. And as a result, we can see which units are struggling. And basically now you can do a deep dive into why and what can be done about this. And it doesn't even have to be the case that one is struggling and one is performing well. Even 2 particular units, like in this example, that perform exactly the same, so they have the same NPS, the same revenue, but there are opportunities if we break down based on customer feedback, and this is something that we do in Thematic. We basically pull out from what people are saying, what matters to them. And let's say one of the attributes is communication, the next one is booking experience, the next one is staff friendliness and ease of use. The blue bar is one of the units and the orange bar is the other unit. And you can see that in some cases, the blue bars are longer, and in other cases, the orange bars are longer. So basically, the 2 business units can learn from each other. What is it what they can do both better and therefore improve as a result? So in competitor benchmarking or external benchmarking, what you can compare are basically whatever solutions are out there that you're competing with based on publicly available reviews. And there's many different sites. So for B2B companies, G2 and Capterra are really good. For B2C, you have, of course, Google reviews, and there are App Store reviews and so on. People also talk on social media about competitors. So Reddit is a great example where you can find whole threads, for example, home electronics, and find all the different competitors that I mentioned there and what do people say about them. You can also engage a third party to run a study. So for example, a double-blind study is when people are evaluating and sharing their feedback on a solution, and they don't know who has commissioned the study, but they're basically evaluating their current provider, and then the third party summarizes the results for you. And if you want to learn more about this, I included a link here on customer strategy blog. There's a whole article about competitive benchmarks and how they can be used. The positives is that you will get a much more clear picture of what customers think about your product. And here I want to share a story again from one of the companies we worked with. They had an NPS of 75 and they were super happy with that. But here's the thing. There's always these NPS benchmarks that are done per industry. So this company said, well, we're making software and other software companies have an NPS of 30, so we're doing amazingly. However, they completely ignored what type of software they were building. So they were actually building software for entertainment. So people who were using them were all fans, and they used it in their spare time. And when they looked at the NPS of their competitors, by doing a third-party study, or they also looked at social media, they actually realized that their competitors' NPS is around 80, 85. So as a result, they realized that not only they're not overperforming above other companies, they're actually lagging. So,
Liana, can I ask a question about that?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
One concern I have when ever doing this type of research is, I guess, the sample quality and making sure that you have the right, I guess, respondents that you're doing the research with. I guess identifying them in certain industries, things like that. I don't know if you've run across ways to kind of to ensure that it's high quality data or sample that you're using for a study.
Yeah, really good point. And I actually mentioned both of these concerns here, that you do have to make sure that the data is reliable. Looking at some of the review sites, a lot of the reviews are fake, and sometimes it's just not possible to get enough, a good enough sample. And for B2B companies, or if it's a niche solution. So definitely a valid concern that you're bringing up. And I think what you can do, well, you really have to take into account your company's specific constraints. And I know that there are third-party companies. One of them is ROI Rocket. They specialize in competitor benchmarking, and they will have access to various panels. Other things that I've seen companies do is basically have lots of conversations over the phone. So if it's a smaller set of potential people you can interview, then you probably would need to do qualitative analysis. So less interviews, but more in-depth interviews. And then a qualitative researcher would basically piece together the story that you need to tell. So this is where thematic probably wouldn't be a good idea if you have, let's say, less than 50 interviews.
Okay, thanks.
But the other positives are, of course, that customers in your internal feedback will only be mentioning things that they want you to add or things that you already have. But when you're analyzing all of the competitor feedback, you might learn about features and services you could be offering that other people are offering and customers like, so opportunities. And you can also find industry trends and potential gaps. So then there are also two different options for benchmarking studies. So one is when you, as Alana mentioned, you want to do a in-depth one-off study, very strategic, preparing for a meeting or answering specific questions from the business. And in this case, you might just write a single report and be done with this. For example, when you're entering a new market and you want to analyze who is out there, or you might want to pivot into a new area or launch a new product, or when you need additional input for your product roadmap. The second option is where you're basically trying to align everybody in the company, and you need to make sure that people are continuously improving. And this is when you use things like monthly, quarterly reports. And here you need both the in-depth analysis to actually understand what all of the different things that you will be tracking mean, and then using dashboards for summarizing high-level insights and kind of going back to them on a monthly basis. And this is because people that you need to align and do something about these metrics won't be analysts, so you can't overwhelm them with too much data. It's almost like a compass. Where are we? Are we heading in the right direction? Is what I'm doing and what I'm working on making a difference? So some of the examples where our customers use this is where they're very passionate about a particular metric like NPS, but they have a very large company with many different business units or divisions, and they need to align everybody. It's also used in employee engagement surveys, so where everybody is invested, both the leaders and the employees and the managers, in making sure that employees are happy. So how now you can benchmark different departments to understand where there are opportunities. and what do employees want? So I'll show you one in-depth study we did, and then I'll show you some examples for continuous improvement. So in this particular examples, we have gathered reviews from 130,000 banking apps and from both iOS and Apple Store. So definitely plenty of data. And we made sure that we only accepted bank apps that have more than 100 reviews. You can see here the logos of the banks that were included in the study, and you might use one of them. I have the app for the First Republic Bank here in the corner, and yeah, share some of the challenges that people had. So this is very recent data, and what we collected here, the name of the store, how many stars each review has, bank name, review date. Of course, we didn't know who the customers were, but we knew the countries and the app version. And then what Thematic brings in, we basically added themes and sentiment associated with each theme. So here's an example where we have a review. After finally getting my username and password fixed, linked both accounts, use the app, pay my bills, love how easy and quick it is. So there were some issues with authentication and login, which is why it's in red. But ultimately, the speed was fast, which is it's showing in green. So we have our structured data, and now we can do lots of interesting things. So for example, we can look at what are the most common themes, and you can see straight away user experience was mentioned in every fourth review. Lots of people say it's a great banking app. Talk about ease or convenience, and then we have features. Basically a theme that summarizes all the different features of banking apps. And the number one feature that's mentioned is depositing checks. So we can conclude that this is the most important feature in a banking app. And there were even additional charts that we were able to do, and I'll share the link to the full study in a second, that basically showed that when people are unhappy, it's because this particular feature doesn't work. So we concluded it's the most important thing. And then we looked at among happy people, so people who have a positive sentiment associated with this feature, which banks have the most reviews. And so in this particular comparative benchmarking, each bar is a different bank. And we're looking at ability to deposit checks as our attribute, kind of like in Formula One car. What about the aerodynamics of your right wheel? Maybe that's the most important thing. So JP Morgan is actually the winner here, followed by two other banks, where people specifically talk about how easy it is to deposit checks through this app. So let's say one of these banks has commissioned the study. In this case, let's assume it's TD Bank. It's one of the larger banks in the US. And of course, they're interested then in comparing themselves versus all of the other banks. And this is what this chart is doing here. It's looking at the last 30 days. It's looking at 1 to 3 star reviews and compares TD Bank in blue to all of the other banks in orange. So we can see that among these reviews, the kinds of themes that people mention are the fact that the app doesn't work or it crashes. And you can see straight away that TD Bank is actually struggling. They have twice as many people saying that the app doesn't work. So will they do something about it? You will read in the full study that we've published on our blog. And then on the positives, of course, because you also want the strengths, it turns out TD Bank has an app that's faster than other banks. So that's great. So the link to the studies right here. So it's on our blog, how Thematic finds insights in large data sets. And another cool insight was when we looked at ESL, Federal Credit Union, and compared its app with the Citibank's app. And what's interesting is that all of the biggest banks in the US have the highest ranking apps. So they have a lot of resources and they can make apps that they have a rating of 4.6 or higher. However, typically smaller banks struggle, but there's this one credit union that we found, ESL, that has an even higher average App Store rating. So we compared the ESL reviews with Citibank's reviews to find out what's so special about this app. And it turns out that it's twice as reliable as Citibank. So it breaks less, and people specifically commented how reliable and stable it is. So they probably don't have as many resources, but they invested all of those resources in making sure that the software works. There's lots of things you can do on a development team to make sure that you're tracking all of the bugs, measuring them and addressing them. Another example is continuous benchmarking. And here's an example dashboard from Thematic, where this company has been tracking geographical divisions as well. And here, looking at California, Sacramento, we can see that this particular division has a slightly higher NPS currently than overall. This is for this year. And looking specifically into what's driving that NPS, Thematic can tell that the number one thing is staff attributes. So staff who work at this particular division are commented on more by in NPS reviews than staff that work in other in other divisions. But at the same time, we also see the opportunity. So the specific themes are redacted here, but you can see that there's something about components and processes and options that where this particular division has roughly the same number of reviews, but the impact is more negative. And impact is basically looking at what's the average what's the NPS within the group of people who mentioned that particular attribute, and how does it compare? So if there are a lot of people who have lower scores for components, the impact will be more negative than if there are a lot of people who have higher NPS score. So we're basically looking at feedback and removing part of it and then comparing the difference to understand what's the impact. So straight away, this particular division has an insight into what are they doing well and should continue doing, and where do they need to improve. And in order to improve, this is where an insights analyst would basically dig deeper into some of these to understand what specifically drives these, potentially do another comparison across types of customers. What is it within the process that's lacking? And this is where we have the dashboard and the analysis. So the analysis view that will provide you more detail. So I'll switch into a live demo now. So here we are in Thematic, and here we have a generic retail company. And this is a different way of looking at a benchmarking dashboard. We've seen a small preview of it in previous slides. So we have different locations here. You can see them listed, ranked here, and the time period you can select here on the dashboard, and you can select other attributes like age of people who shop at these retail locations. And straight away you see that there's one particular location A, that is slightly worse than others. Overall, they're all doing pretty well on a 5 scale satisfaction ratings, which is what this company uses. But location A is definitely has less positive reviews, more negative reviews. So what's going on here? So we jump into the analysis view, and what we do here is very similarly select the same time period. Now we select location A. So this just filters down to location A responses, and you can see majority of them are positive. So let's look at location, actually look back and see which one should we benchmark against. Let's benchmark against location B. So now we have location B shown in orange, same time period, so it's comparable. And we can see that location B has better stuff, just like in our example in the slides where I've shared. Both talk about how great the stuff is, but location B has more people talk about specifically friendliness and helpfulness. And there's some other stuff related themes. So basically there are people who mention that their staff is either not friendly or there's not enough of them on the floor, and it's 3 complaints versus 1 complaint. You can see that the number of responses is similar, so it is comparable. It's not necessarily statistically significant, so what you can do is increase the time period and see if you have more data. Is this a trend? Is this actually a trend? Let's see. Just add a few more months. And do the same thing for the location B. Oh, it looks like it's not necessarily something in terms of complaints. It's not necessarily something that occurs frequent. But when people don't mention things like friendly or helpful stuff, that means they're kind of lukewarm about the stuff, because this specific difference is statistically significant. So Thematic helps you kind of decipher these. So range of products, location A actually has roughly the same or not statistically significant difference. And the rest is roughly the same. Let's see, store layout, it has better store layout. So this is where location B could learn from location A. It looks like it's more, it's better organized. So this is the strength of that particular location. So now if they bring, if the staff improves even further, they really have the opportunity to improving their average satisfaction. And of course, it's interesting to look at the revenue for location A and location B and track it, given this insight and changes that they will make, what will happen.
So Aliona, just here. So in terms of this point, we're deciding which variables, which themes are important.
Mhm.
as a starting point. So we're looking at ones that are mentioned a lot, so they rank up high, but also ones where there are large differences. So there are a couple of different ways of looking at it. Is that right?
Yeah, and Thematic automatically sorts things by the largest difference. So the ones at the top have are the biggest differences, whereas the ones at the bottom is where you have the least difference.
All right.
You can change the ranking, but this is the ranking that's most useful for benchmarking.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing you can do, as I mentioned, looking at any particular attribute. Let's even take all of the data. And finding items. It's if people can find the items easily, they can then buy them. So it's quite an important attribute, top 4, from the perspective of the customers. This is where you can basically benchmark based on a particular location. So easy to find. Is there, how does it differ across locations? So it looks like location D has less reviews where people say it's easy to find things. So that's another way of finding opportunities, by going through attribute first rather than division or location.
It's really important too. I know that just talking to the point of, you mentioned being quite neutral before, that you want to have this strong positive reaction. And we know that if people are feeling fairly neutral towards something, it's not a good indication. That people should be having fairly strong response to you, because it makes they're more involved when it's like that. So just in this case, having more positive response, you could just look at it as, oh, they're just saying it because they like it. But it's a reflection of the fact that they feel it's really good, that it matters to them, and that's why they mention it.
Yeah, I think you can't really dismiss things as easily when you look at locations, and especially if there's other data linked to it. Performance data, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's driving that? And then you're looking for answers rather than wanting to dismiss things as well. Feel free to jump in if you have any more questions, but what the final couple of slides that I have here is that we have different competitive benchmarking studies that we have on our blog. So let me just go into the present view so you can see it better. So this is something we do to just demonstrate the types of insights Thematic can find, but also some really interesting examples. This is a couple of years old, but we reviews all of the different dating apps. And we also did a comparative analysis, Mi Band versus Apple Watch, similar products, but completely different price range. And you can find them all on our blog. And one comparative study that I wrote, and very, very insightful, is comparing different Scotch flavors. So different producers of Scottish whiskey, and we've analyzed tasting notes from experts to realize what makes a really amazing Scotch. And you can find the answer here.
Yeah, I think one of the great things too about just the availability of that data is that you can pull that data for free. It's easily accessible to pull down. Does it come down with a CSV file, Aliona?
So in this particular case, it was a unique use case. We scraped the data from a site that had all of these tasting notes. Well, we're friends with the sites, and they may have given it to us as a CSV spreadsheet. But there are ways of doing a free trial with a CSV, or we also have integrations into all of the app stores. So you just put the number of the apps that you want to analyze and compare, and you can do it. And or you can, we also have social media integrations where you can search for a keyword on Reddit or in Discourse, and or select a particular subreddit and look at what people are talking there. So the social media ones aren't available by the free trial, but the CSV upload is, and you're most welcome to try Thematic out on some of your data. Well, thanks so much for joining, and the recording will be available on our website, and hope you have a great rest of your day.